Okay, friends and enemies, welcome back to another sip and rip. It's Monday morning. I didn't record yesterday because my daughter was in such a good mood when she woke up that I didn't want to waste time talking to you guys. But there's a lot of good stories that came out yesterday that we will talk about. This is Roberta Bondar. Roberta Bondar is a famous Canadian astronaut and neurologist here, according to Google. I went to see Roberta Bondar speak at the Hamilton Convention Center when I was a kid. My dad took me. I had this fascination with two things really when I was growing up. One was ancient Egypt, and the other was space. So we ended up going to see her, and I remember during the Q&A period, she called on me for a question, and some adult man asked the question instead. In retrospect, I was pretty mad at that time, but in retrospect, it's probably an honest mistake. Everyone was kind of packed in together in the Q&A section, so no big deal. Why am I talking about Roberta Bondar? Well, we will discuss in a minute. First, the sponsors, EasyDNS. Mark has been a friend of ours, friend of the show for a long time now. And if you're starting a website or a business that needs a website, or anything that needs a website, really, Mark is your guy. Because of his attention to detail and his attention to online safety, protection. Safety is almost a bad word now in the online space, thanks to some of these laws. Mark has easy mail, domain insurance, some other stuff that for a couple of bucks, once you get your domain, will protect not only your data, but the data of the people who are using your website, visiting your website, all these good things. And then, of course, if you're a Bitcoiner, virtual private server options there for you. You can run a Bitcoin node, Nostr, Relay, whatever you like. He's got all of it there for you. CBP Media is the code. You get half off your first round of buys. The second sponsor is Bull Bitcoin. Prices in the 80s. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know why. I don't know how. I don't care. I'm buying. You're buying. I can see. And why not? Bull Bitcoin, when you think about the exchanges you use, you want to use an exchange that cares about Bitcoin, is Canadian, doesn't sell garbage, tries to help build the Bitcoin economy. And of course, Len and I are friends with the team there. They're outstanding men and women, and we fully support their mission. They've done some great stuff lately as far as Recoverable and the Bull Wallet, and not to mention the platform update a few months ago too. So go there, use the promo code CBP, get I think 50% off your fees or 25% off your fees, which is great for life. And the 256 heat, you can hear my miner, or can you, running in the background. I had Hoddle D and his wife over for dinner on Saturday, and it was a discussion piece. Looks nice, sounds quiet, heats the room, and obviously heating with hash, you get a couple of bucks in Bitcoin as well. So head to 256heat.com and just tell Twan we sent you. He'll hook you up. Maybe give you a little bit of a deal too. Okay, so Roberta. The reason we're talking about Roberta, my friends, is that Canada just announced a $500 million investment in European Space Agency programs. We haven't had a mission here, I think a fully Canadian mission in decades, if we ever had one. And as far as I can tell, it's also been years since we sent a Canadian astronaut into space, but we apparently have $500 million for, I don't know, European Space Agency investments. The article is not really rich in detail, but my question is not so much why aren't we doing our own space program. My question is, why are we not using that $500 million for something better? We'll talk a little bit about some of the things we could use it on as the show goes on here, since we do have a packed docket today. Just wild stuff, the stuff that we're spending money on. Again, I continue to say this, and I do say it angrily sometimes, but it is true that if you just view the spending and the announcements through the lens of these people at the top are too old or too insulated or some combination of the two to understand the information environment they're working in. This was never a concern years ago, even 5 or 10 years ago, and now everybody is poking through every line that becomes public information in these budgets. I would not be surprised if in the next 5 years, let's say 10 years, 5 years, some first world government somewhere, UK a good candidate, Germany a good candidate, we unfortunately are a good candidate, will say that the budget is only going to be high level spending because there's too many security or cultural implications that will lead to security issues. And so it's only going to say foreign investment, this much money. It's not going to say investment in the European Space Agency and stuff like that. We'll come back to Canada in a bit on the show. The reason really that I wanted to record this early is because I saw this article from Mike Green. I don't want to call him a friend of the CBP, but he's been on the CBP before. This is going to be the article of the week. If you haven't read this yet, it's free on his Substack, and he tweeted it out. And this might be the best thing I've read in like a year, maybe longer. It's about the poverty line in the United States, and how the poverty line calculation is actually just this old metric that triples up the bare minimum cost to feed a family. And what he argues in this article is actually fairly intuitive. And we've talked about it before. We're not the only ones. How at some level of income, what happens to your quality of life? It ends up dropping from the bare minimum level of income, because as you emerge from poverty to working class, let's say, you lose subsidies for daycare. And so daycare actually costs more than the increase in your salary that bumped you from the sort of 0 class to the 1 class. And this happens a few times on the way up. One is for healthcare, one is for daycare. There's a few others in here that Mike talks about. And it is actually crazy that he defines the poverty line not as 30,000, but as 140,000 US dollars per family. I'm not going to summarize the whole article because he does give a lot of data points, anecdotes, and I think a lot of stuff here that's really too important to not read. But the point is that when we hear people talk about, and Len and I are guilty of this on CBP, when you hear people talk about, I don't want to get a job because life will get harder with a job, it's not necessarily that these people are lazy. It is, though, that they are unable to articulate why it is life is getting harder. And so you have this valley of death Mike talks about, where you're getting chipped away at as you improve, quote unquote, improve your socioeconomic situation through wages. But you just can't get out of the gutter until you get to $140,000, which is insane. That is an insane number. We're in the year 2025. To say that poverty in the States, especially where this is geared toward the States, but you have these numbers here that no matter how well you do, you're getting nuked because your wages are not rising faster than your new required spending is. Unbelievable, just unbelievable. I highly recommend everybody read this if you haven't already. Here's a story from the United States that's making the rounds. Geiger's become one of my favorite accounts. Noah Smith tweeting out about this Somalian, I think, autism fraud. What the Somalian community in Minnesota is doing is overdiagnosing their children with autism through Somalian doctors and using the net benefits coming down from the United States government, I think also from the state government, to send back, I think the number got into $1 billion. I'm not sure over what time frame, but quite a bit of money back to Somalia through remittance payments. And some of that money ended up in a terrorist cell, if not all of it or most of it, back in Somalia. This is the issue with small communities that don't ever assimilate. They revert to cultural norms in the places from which they came. This is not a racist thing to say. It is a factual thing to say, and it happens to every culture, every race, no matter what. If you go down to Little Italy in Hamilton, there's a lot of people playing Scopa and drinking espresso, watching soccer. That's not necessarily a Canadian thing to do, but a Canadian Italian may do that from time to time when he gets together with his Italian friends or Italian family. There's always cards when I go to my Nona's house. But this kind of cultural thing goes back to 2 points we've made on Sip and Rip and also on CBP. One is that it seems to me that there's at least a possibility that this culture is incompatible with the modern Western culture. And two, that there is a problem with cultures that don't integrate and end up instead relying on quote unquote professionals of the same cultural background, skin color, religion, to continue a scam with a bigger purse once they come to the first world. So, all these things considered, I would just say be careful that you're not involving yourself in something like this. It's difficult to talk about because you do, get branded as a racist or whatever, but I really don't care. I think those terms have broadly lost their meaning, and there's sort of defunct terms now for people who are dumb to try and deperson or deplatform or delegitimize the argument they disagree with and don't have a better point on. So that aside, let's keep going here. This is the police chief of Minnesota apologizing for finding the criminal activity. You can't make it up. I'm not going to play the video. Or will I? Yeah, fuck it. Let's play the video. Let's see what this guy says.
The Somali community here in Minneapolis has been welcoming and has shown love towards me, and I appreciate it. Over the last 3 years, we have been working together to try and address some of the real serious problems that we have in our community. We have to be honest at times with the problems that we're having in our community, and we need our community to help us fix those problems together because it's real and it's serious. At the same time, if people have taken anything that I have said out of context in a way that's caused harm, I apologize and I'm sorry for that because that's not my intention at all.
This is a humiliation ritual for this guy. He's a total clown. Should be ashamed of himself. History will remember him as a coward. To stand in front of a group of people like this who's ripped off your country, your state, your community, that's just talking about the money stolen, not talking about crime, which we don't, which we won't talk about on the show today. But you can go look up the crime stats in these communities in Minnesota specifically, and not to mention you have to have 2 translators there for a community that's been welcoming. Well, they don't speak your language. This is a problem. I think we're finding this more and more, that the rational position has always been that this is not what integration looks like. And if you continue to allow this, you will destroy your country and culture. Again, nothing to do with skin color, nothing to do with anything else. It's 100% country and culture. You have to adapt to the superior culture when you arrive on the shores of a country that's welcoming you, not try and bring that culture down to your level, which is what's happening here. Completely ridiculous. Here's Brian Lilly speaking of cultural battles. You can't get dumber than this, taking the name off the name of Dundas Station because of fake slavery claims and then leaving Dundas on the sign of the renamed station. If you're on audio, come on over to YouTube and look at this. They've replaced the Dundas Street station with a sign that says TMU, and then underneath it says Dundas Street. I think there's some numbers floating around about what this Dundas Street effort has cost taxpayers at this point. I think Len and I talked about it about a year ago. The consultation phase was like $800K. That didn't include salaries and other tangential tertiary costs. I think the number now is $2.2 million. So in Toronto, you have a budget deficit that's significant. Olivia Chow, when she's not dancing in a bikini, is begging for money from the province and the federal government. Tongue-tied there. When she's not dancing in a bikini, is begging for money, and yet they have $2.2 million to spend on this kind of nonsense. I mean, this is retarded. To have this amount of money spent, and then for that same consultation to come up with, we're going to just replace the big letters with TMU, but we're going to leave the little letters for Dundas Street, because let's face it, no one's ever going to call this TMU. No one's ever going to call it. Just doesn't. It's nonsense. The whole thing is nonsense. It's got to stop. And Toronto, of course, in budget and fiscal hell, already has $2.2 million for this. Incredible. Floyd Marinescu making another appearance. Floyd is a UBI guy. He's the co-founder of UBI Works. He's talking about a Daniel Foch tweet from recently, from November 17th, so a week ago, about another land claim coming through Ontario, and it's along the Grand River here. So Brantford, Caledonia, Waterloo, Kitchener, Cambridge, among other communities. I like Floyd. I think he's a good guy, but he's just he's wrong enough that he could probably be on the show every week. A good outcome, this is from him, a good outcome here would be a modest annual 0.1% land value rent paid for by everyone on this treaty land to the First Nations. Homeowners get certainty of title. First Nations get permanent compensation. And he says he owns property in that claim. Again, this is just the worst, one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. Caving to the tribes at this point is a fool's errand. They're not acting in good faith. The chiefs and leaders specifically are grifters and criminals. I don't see how you could view this any other way. We could talk about some of the stuff going on as far as First Nations. What's a good way to put this? The only problem with recording these things first thing in the morning is my wheels are not turning as fast as they could. The First Nations have a PR problem right now, let's say, to put it kindly, okay? They have a land claim issue in Vancouver and in British Columbia, I should say, that's just completely nuked any goodwill that was left. And, talking to Mark Jeftovic yesterday on Twitter a little bit, The optimist in me, given that Carney has, whether you agree or not, basically started enacting like a center-right politics and a center-right budget, I think it's possible that one of the reasons these land claims are being dangled out so publicly is because the federal government and provincial governments realize that these guys, the First Nations peoples, are in a PR crisis, and letting this stuff dangle in the media for longer and letting them get in front of microphones and make claims about stuff, and it's really nuking what little legitimacy and support they had left among Canadians. My question for Floyd and others is, when you talk about permanent compensation or reconciliation efforts or good faith reconciliation efforts with the tribes people, there's only two things I think that are important to think about. One is, why is reconciliation constantly just money? And two, who is it that's doing the reconciling? Many polls at this point, from province to province, community to community, countrywide, or smaller sample sizes, they all have the same problem, and that problem is that no one actually thinks any of this stuff works, and no one wants to do it. So you're not actually winning over the hearts and minds of Canadians with this stuff. It's got to stop. I am of the opinion that we should just disengage entirely with the First Nations community and leave them to their own devices. We've obviously seen the landfill that's popped up here thanks to some satellite imaging in BC as well, and the leaders there. I think I talked about this on Sip and Rip, but the leaders over there saying, well, this is everyone's land when it comes to cleaning up. Okay, well, it's not everyone's land when it comes to reconciling it for a couple of bucks out of my pocket, and that's all that matters to me. So this has to stop. We got to stop this entirely. This is Avi Lewis. He's running for leadership at the NDP. Again, I think that this is important, not because, not necessarily because cell phone public options are a hot button topic, though I do pay too much for my cell phone. I think because the meta on communist bullshit is changing a little bit, and you're seeing this a few places: New York, Seattle, Portland, a few other of these really left-leaning U.S. cities. And here you're seeing stuff like this as well. The key term here is that the key term he's using is public option. This is the new meta for communism. In a country the size of Canada, we need a public option for cell phone service. It can be a matter of life and death. I agree that cell phones are too expensive, and there are dead zones. I'm actually not opposed to like giving everybody who can't afford a cell phone plan the worst phone possible with great service for free. If you need to call 911, you can use it, of course. I think that's good. But the idea that we're going to give out iPhone 13s or 15s or 17s to people, and the taxpayer will fund it in a moment where we have nothing but deficit and debt, I think is ridiculous. But if you call it a public option, it doesn't sound as bad as communism. Avi Lewis, you're not fooling me, buddy. You're not fooling me. Let's talk about more Canadian spending. Table Salt noting that Canada is sending $643,000 to Myanmar to, quote, strengthen women's participation in landmine clearing. I don't think that's what the feminist movement meant when they said equality. I doubt very much they want to be doing the work of, I think monkeys do this work. Do they not, or used to? That may date me a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that there was monkeys trained to basically give their lives on minefields, just running across them, trying to trip the explosive devices before any human interaction with those areas. Pretty good. So you can go to Myanmar and see some of your dollars, your tax money, making sure that women are clearing landmine fields over there. It's good. It's good. That's very strong. Yeah, I look forward to hearing feminist groups embracing that. Last story for this week, because I can hear my daughter stirring upstairs. CNN flew all the way to Johannesburg, South Africa, to shoot a propaganda video for Americans on how USAID cuts are affecting a transgender clinic. They expect to guilt trip American taxpayers into paying for trans medical care 8,000 miles away. We'll play the clip here in a second, but the quote, more than 1,000 other trans people were relying on this USAID-funded clinic in Johannesburg for care, and it's now shut down. Let's have a listen here. Get your Kleenex ready. Can I just point out that the physiognomy here is really something to behold? It is always like an androgynous fat guy doing these stories, or the the woman who was interviewing Sydney Sweeney, this like meek and mild, don't you think you should just agree with me? Like, no, I don't. And your BMI is too high. Let's listen.
As soon as Trump was inaugurated,
within like a week, just decided that he wants nothing to do, especially with LGBTQI plus people.
Adwa Mabani is a trans woman who lives with HIV.
There's some greetings that are written in different languages so that we can accommodate everybody.
She and more than 1,000 other trans people were relying on this USAID funded clinic in Johannesburg for care. It's now shut down.
this place means a lot to you.
Yeah, it meant a lot living with my community as well, because that's where they would feel like there is a safe space.
When you hear Adwa's story, how does that make you feel?
I feel devastated.
Dr. Chloe Schwenke worked with USAID for decades and under President Obama became the first openly trans person appointed to the agency.
We basically just said those people don't matter. And I take it personally. Chloe, you don't matter. And my friends in Africa who are LGBTQI don't matter. That's rubbish. Of course we matter.
Anti-LGBTQ stigma in many parts of Africa prevent people from getting adequate care. It's what made clinics like this a lifeline for Adwa.
We've experienced maybe 5 deaths of trans people that were our patients through the stigma that they were getting.
What's your biggest worry now?
My biggest worry, I would say, is that my community is gonna die.
Africa has had an AIDS problem for decades at this point. They've been, sort of a disaster zone for many different reasons over the last few years. But, specifically, we're seeing now Africa have these issues with USAID. I don't necessarily think that USAID is the problem here. Africa's culturally got problems. AIDS has been rampant there for a long time. And I just think that there's no appetite to pay for some of these things anymore. As something's wrong with my camera here, but whatever. There's no appetite to pay for these things anymore. Nobody wants to pay for more funding for social programs overseas, more funding for AIDS overseas, more funding for trans people overseas, more funding for women clearing landmines, more. Because everyone can see that there's no accountability, first of all, in that kind of spending, which is a problem. But the bigger thing is that people, like Mike Green points out in his article, I'm not going to, go into it, but it's a good place to tie a bow on this. People are broke. They're tired. And they don't hate their neighbor for receiving support. They hate their government for not helping them when the expectation is that they pay into these sorts of, they're nonsense programs. They're nonsense programs. They have to stop. Anyway, that's Sip and Rip. Come back tonight. The flagship is on tonight. Len sent me the stories. You guys are going to love what we got to talk about, as always. And leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from or something. I don't know. I got to try and game the YouTube algorithm a little bit. But in the meantime, enjoy your coffee, enjoy your breakfast, and make sure you lift heavy today. See you tonight.